Hey guys, tonight we step into a Viking settlement muddy, smoky, chaotic and you're not just watching, you're living it. The ground squelches beneath your boots, if you're lucky enough to own any. The air is thick with the temps of livestock, fish, and a steady curtain of wood smoke from low, turf-roofed longhouses. Welcome to your new home, which honestly feels more like a very aggressive barn. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment telling me your location and local time. Always fun to see where we're traveling from tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your bare hands are already stiff from the sea chill, as you're herded off a longship into the squelching mud of a settlement on the coast. The village isn't exactly postcard material. Everything is browns and grays. There are maybe 30 buildings, all with low timber walls and sod roofs covered in moss, like the earth is trying to reclaim them. A few dogs bark lazily from the shadows. Chickens scatter around your feet, and there's a definite smell of something fermented. Maybe the fish, maybe the people. You're a newcomer, and everyone knows it. Your cloak is still dry, your beard hasn't yet collected soot, and you look around like you expected, well, something different, like maybe a horn-blowing welcome, or at least a warm mead. But instead, a woman elbows past you with a bucket of slop. A toddler clings to her skirt, and a teenager with half an eyebrow missing points at you and laughs. Probably not a great sign. A man, let's call him, grabs your shoulder and grunts something about helping unload the ship. You're now part of the working population. And guess what? Vikings didn't exactly do orientation. You haul barrels, crates, and sacks of grain into the storage house, where the scent is so musty you're fairly certain your lungs have turned into mushrooms. Historians agree Viking settlements were highly communal, like claustrophobically, so houses often held 10 to 30 people, all sleeping under one long roof. In winter, livestock sometimes shared the space. Why? Body heat. And maybe the goats paid rent in cuddles. You'll lead into one of these It's dim, the only light coming from the central fire pit, which has no chimney. That's right, you're breathing in smoke 24/7. Your eyes start watering in minutes. And no, you can't open a window. Windows haven't been invented here, not the glass kind. Anyway, a middle-aged woman hands you a bowl of something beige and steaming. Is it porridge? Soup? Boiled roots? You'll never know, because it's too hot to taste and too chunky to question. You eat. You pretend you enjoy it. You survive. A fringe tidbit. Vikings used communal latrines, and one archaeological site found a shared toilet inside the longhouse, separated only by a cloth. That's right, bathroom privacy score 0. By nightfall, you're exhausted. But sleep isn't a luxury here. It's a game of musical straw mats. You find a spot near the wall, curl up in your itchy wool blanket, and try not to breathe too loud. You're wedged between a snoring elder with suspicious breath and a dog who smells like moldy cheese. You might be wondering, what about privacy? Historians still argue whether Viking families had personal sleeping quarters or just accepted that everyone heard ... farts and hushed arguments. The answer seems pretty clear. Outside, the wind howls over the fjord, rattling the thin wooden walls. You curl tighter, hoping this isn't the night wolves decide to try their luck with the livestock, and as you drift off, half suffocated by wool and wood smoke, it hits you. This isn't a weekend adventure. This is home now, and you haven't even met the blacksmith yet. You wake up with your mouth tasting like smoked straw and your back twisted into a shape you didn't know was physically possible. Someone, possibly the goat, stepped on your arm during the night. Morning in the Viking settlement isn't heralded by birdsong or the gentle glow of sunshine, no. It's a bucket of cold water dumped on the fire, a baby wailing somewhere behind you, and the unmistakable stench of freshly produced manure. Chores begin before breakfast. And since you're the newest addition to the village, guess who gets the glamorous jobs? You. First order of business, helping shovel animal waste from the longhouse. You trudge outside, grab a wooden scoop that's more splinters than tool, and get to work. Chickens scatter around you again, clucking in that smug, poultry way. A pig watches you from the pen with unsettling intelligence. You whisper to it that you used to have indoor plumbing. It does not care. In Viking life, there's no such thing as unemployed. Everyone contributes: children, elders, warriors, between raids. If you're old enough to stand, you're old enough to carry something. And if you're not pulling your weight, well, there's always Iceland. You're sent to help grind barley. This sounds simple. It is not. You sit with another woman, Helga, who's built like a shipwrecked tree, and together you use a pair of flat stones to crush dry barley into flour. 4 hours. With no you try to make conversation. She nods once and keeps grinding. Midway through, she offers you a drink from a shared ladle. It's a kind of thin beer called ale brewed, because the water here might give you a very short and very unpleasant life. The ale is warm, cloudy, and tastes like someone whispered bread into a bowl of pond water. Still, you thank her like it's champagne. Quirky tidbit of the day: Viking women were often in charge of brewing brand. If you insulted a woman's ale, she could challenge you to a fighting or a public insult contest. If you lost, you were socially destroyed. If you won, she might marry you or throw you in a river. Once your hands are numb from barley dust, it's off to chop firewood. The axe is heavier than it looks, and it keeps catching on a knot in the wood. You pretend you're doing great, while a toddler nearby splits twigs with the elegance of a forest elf. Somewhere across the village, a horn sounds. Not a battle horn, just the "we're about to eat something" horn. You wipe your hands on your tunic, which is already ruined, and jog toward the longhouse. Breakfast is a thin gruel, made from the barley you just ground. Full circle. It's sprinkled with dried herbs and, if you're lucky, a few tiny chunks of something. You eat sitting shoulder to shoulder with others on low wooden benches. No forks, no plates, juiced wooden bowls, your fingers, and one big communal spoon that keeps mysteriously disappearing. Now, before you think you'll starve, Vikings weren't culinary artists, but they made do. They used salt, dill, mustard seeds, and juniper to season food. Historians believe most meals were heavy on cabbage, root vegetables, and fish. Dried fish, pickled fish, fish in soup, fish in bread, possibly fish in your nightmares. Historians still argue. You overhear someone mutter whether it was better to be inland or coastal. And while you don't yet know the answer, your nose tells you the coastal life smells deeply of cod. After breakfast, you help tend the communal garden, a patch of soil more mud than earth, with stringy carrots, cabbages, and onions poking out like they regret sprouting. You dig, weed, and wonder how anyone lived past 30. Because here's the thing: Viking life wasn't just raids and shiny helmets. It was relentless. Every season demanded a different kind of labor: planting in spring, haymaking in summer, slaughtering in autumn, and surviving in winter. And leisure time, that meant weaving, mending nets, repairing roofs, or dealing with that one guy who keeps trying to make music with a sheep's bladder. By sunset, your hands are raw, your legs ache, and you've somehow got a beetle living in your sleeve. You stagger back to the longhouse, where someone hands you a bowl of the same gruel, but this time, they've added a turnip. Luxury. As you sit by the smoky fire, coughing softly and wondering if this is your new normal, you glance around at the others. They're tired too, covered in soot, their clothes patched a dozen times, their hands calloused, and yet they laugh. A young boy juggles dried apples and misses spectacularly. Someone's playing a bone flute badly, and for just a moment, despite the filth and the chores and the goats still glaring at you from the shadows, you feel kind of home. Your hands still ache from yesterday's wood chopping when someone slaps your back hard enough to knock the air out of you. Time to learn a real skill. Arn grins, already dragging you toward the blacksmith's hut. You're about to become a blacksmith's apprentice, or at least survive pretending to be one. The smithy stands slightly apart from the longhouses, for obvious reasons. It's loud, hot, and smells like fire, sweat, and scorched hair. As you step inside, you're hit with a wall of heat. The forge blazes with orange flames, and everything is soot dark: the walls, the tools, the face of the blacksmith, whose beard seems to contain both wisdom and last night's dinner. His name is Katil. He eyes you up and down like he's measuring scrap iron. You've got soft hands. We'll fix that. You're handed a pair of worn leather gloves. If gloves means fingerless sacks that reek of old onions, and told to pump the bellows. You start, the forge roars, and the temperature jumps instantly from sweaty to dragon breath. Your eyebrows singe a little. No one seems concerned. In Viking culture, the blacksmith held a special role: part craftsman, part magician. Forging metal was seen as a powerful, almost mystical process. Some even believed smiths could influence fate itself. You're hoping fate includes you not passing out. You watch as Katil reheats a half-finished axe head. He sprinkles a strange black powder onto the glowing iron. You ask what it is? He grins. Grave dust, you laugh nervously. He doesn't. Quirky tidbit. Some Viking smiths allegedly added secret ingredients, bone herbs, or blood into their forge to strengthen the weapon. Historians debate whether this was superstition or early metallurgy or both. You're shown how to hammer the iron. Strike, turn, strike, turn, miss, yelp. Try not to cry. Sparks leap into your tunic. Your arms scream in protest. After 5 minutes, your grip slips and you drop the hammer. Katil just snorts. Better than the last apprentice. He lit his trousers on fire. Midday brings no break. You're still hammering when someone brings a small hunk of rye bread and cheese. So hard you consider using it as a weapon. You devour it anyway, watching Katil shape a sword blade, pausing now and then to test the edge on his thumb, which is covered in tiny scars. Why do you do this? You ask. He shrugs. Because ships break, blades dull, but iron remembers. It's the closest thing to poetry you've heard since arriving. Later, you'd help polish a finished axe. It gleams in the sun like something alive. You run a finger near the blade's edge close enough to get nervous. This isn't just a tool, it's a message, a warning, a piece of someone's story yet to be written. Historians still argue, Katil mutters, more to himself than you, if the best axes came from here or the Frankish lands. But I say the man swinging, it matters more than the maker. You nod, mostly because your ears are ringing, your face is coated in soot, and your brain feels like it's been slowly cooked. As dusk settles, Katil lets you cool the forge. You pump water onto the coals, which hiss like angry spirits. The light dims. Everything smells like wet ash. You clean the tools badly and finally limp out of the hut. You don't feel your hands anymore. That's probably bad. But that night, by the fire, you notice the others watching you differently. Someone nods. Someone passes you a larger spoon for your group. You've survived a day in the forge and that counts. As you drift to sleep, still warm from the forge heat baked into your bones, you dream of iron, of hammer strikes echoing across mountains, of glowing blades being born in fire, of Katil's smirk as he says, "Soft hands, we'll fix that." Turns out, he wasn't kidding. The scratching starts before dawn. At first, you think it's just, hey, or maybe one of the dogs again. But then you realize it's your head and your back. And unfortunately, your underarms. You sit up, eyes bleary, and lock eyes with Helga, who's already combing her hair with what looks like a small, jagged rake. "You've got lice," she says, like she's announcing the weather. "You'll get used to it." You scratch. She nods in solidarity. Welcome to the never-ending itch of Viking life. Lice weren't just common, they were inevitable. Living in tight, smoky quarters with rarely washed clothes and sharing beds, blankets, combs, and hats meant that little freeloaders were part of daily life. You could even say lice were a communal experience. There's a moment of quiet panic as you realize you've never felt so itchy. Every movement brings another twitch. You can't stop. Helga offers you her knit comb made of bone and gestures for you to sit. You scream. "I smack you," she says cheerfully. She starts combing. It hurts. But the weirdest part, it actually feels ... normal. This is grooming in the Viking world. Communal, efficient, and mildly humiliating. Historians have uncovered dozens of knit combs in Viking graves, many beautifully carved and often found tucked into belts or packs. Hair care was serious business, even if bathing wasn't. That said, most villagers only bathed once a week, usually on Saturdays, a tradition that led some medieval Christians to call Vikings clean freaks. You're escorted to the river for a rinse. The water's glacial, and you scream a little. A child throws a fish at you. Bath time ends with a handful of soap made from lye and animal fat, which both burns and smells like something died nobly in a field. You're clean. The lice are annoyed, but not gone. As you dry off, someone smears a foul-smelling paste into your hair. Birch tar, they explain, kills the eggs. The scent is ... memorable. A combination of pine smoke, burnt rubber, and desperation. But hey, better than scratching yourself raw at dinner. Quirky tidbit. Some Viking remedies for lice included onion paste, urine rinses, and even a kind of lice ritual involving fire and chanting. You quietly hope no one brings that up tonight. Back at the longhouse, your old clothes are hung over a smoky fire to cleanse them, which mostly means they now smell like smoked goat and still it. Your lone despair tunic thicker wool, surprisingly comfy, but it's crawling with mystery stains, and you're pretty sure one of them winked at you. Lice weren't the only uninvited guests. Fleas, bedbugs, and mites were all part of Viking ecology. There were even flea traps made of cloth soaked in blood to draw them in overnight, like little five-star hotels for pests. Someone slaps your back and announces it's a lousing hour at the lawn. You enter to find people checking each other's scalps like monkeys. It's oddly affectionate. You get in line. By now, you're itchy, tired, and wondering if this is what intimacy means in the north. Still, the day presses on. You fetch firewood, and someone mentions you'll help scrape a deer hide tomorrow. Great. More smells. More bugs. Before dinner, Helga points to a large communal pot boiling outside. Laundry. You stare at the water. Floating inside are socks, a dog blanket, a child's tunic, and Witcher old underwear. You sigh. Dinner is blessedly free of insects. Mostly a thick stew of cabbage, dried fish, and root vegetables, spiced with something sharp, maybe mustard seed, maybe just hope. You slurp it with the concentration of a monk. When someone asks how your bath went, you say, invigorating, and earn a slow nod of approval. That night, as you curl under your blanket, you scratch less, only a little. You hear the snore of the goat, the fart of someone you now consider a friend, and the crackle of the fire that half-cleansed your life today. And for the first time, you think, maybe you'll survive this after all, unless the lice unionize. It's dinner time. Again, or something vaguely resembling it. Your stomach growls like a wounded bear. You'd think after several days in a Viking village, your appetite would have adjusted, but your stomach still holds out hope for something with texture, maybe flavor. Order it, dream. Heats that comes from a source other than lukewarm goat breath. You sit cross-legged by the hearth, bowl in hand, staring into the night's meal. It's soup or stew, possibly porridge that gave up and went rogue, a grayish sludge, with chunks that may be fish, root vegetable, or the emotional remains of someone's broken will to live. You take a bite. It's salty, or maybe sour. Your taste buds have filed a formal protest and refuse to offer further commentary. Meals in Viking settlements weren't exactly food festivals. The diet depended heavily on what was available, meaning whatever didn't run away fast enough. That usually included fish, seaweed, barley, cabbage, and wild greens. Occasionally, you'd get the luxury of meat goat, pig, or even horse, though that was controversial. Historians still argue whether horse meat was eaten for necessity or ritual, but tonight, it's definitely not on the menu. Unless someone's lying. Helga sits beside you, slurping loudly and offering you a flatbread the size of a child's face. It's tough, dry, and doubles as a plate if you don't eat it fast enough. You try gnawing on the edge. Your jaw screams. You pretend it's delicious. She seems pleased. Tonight's meal includes a garnish of foraged greens and wild herbs, some sort of mustard leaf. Judging by the spicy punch your sinuses, a few unlucky folks got spoiled fish. You can tell by the quiet retching behind the long house. And don't even think about dessert. If you're lucky, someone might pass around a dried apple slice or a chunk of honeycomb. If you're really lucky, it won't have bee parts still in it. Quirky tidbit. Vikings sometimes ate blood pudding, an animal blood mixed with grain and fat. You eye the bowl in your hands now and try not to wonder if that's what's giving it the iron aftertaste. You finish eating just as someone dumps hot water into a trough near the fire. It's the communal dishwashing station, which involves scrubbing your wooden bowl with sand, rinsing in smoky water, and then air drying by propping it on a goat's back. You think that last part might be a joke. No one corrects you. The longhouse slowly fills with satisfied groans. Everyone seems full or at least resigned. You're surprised at how quiet mealtimes can be. You expected loud singing, drunken toasts, and turkey legs flung across the room. But the truth is, food is sacred. When you only have one meal a day that doesn't taste like boiled leather, you don't waste it with conversation. You lean back against a support beam, listening to the fire pot. A boy is telling a story about his uncle catching an eel that bit his thumb clean off. Someone laughs. Someone else burps so loud the rafters shake. That's when Aaron walks in carrying a large clay jar. Everyone cheers. Mead. Some in whispers, eyes glowing like treasure hunters. You get handed a small wooden cup. It smells like honey and old socks. You sip. It burns. But then the sweetness kicks in. It's strong, wild, and kind of magical. Mead was the Viking beverage of choice, fermented honey water, sometimes spiced, sometimes cursed. Drinking was social, celebratory, and occasionally deadly. Don't drink too fast, Helga warns, or you'll wake up naked in the hay with a chicken for a pillow. You pace yourself. One sip, then two. And suddenly the stew doesn't seem so bland. The fire feels warmer. The goat seems friendlier. You relax. That's when the singing starts. Not loud, not raucous, just low and rolling, like a river humming in your chest. It's in Old Norse, and you don't understand the words, but you feel them. Songs of journeys, of feasts, of battle, of loss. It's not just music, it's history wrapped in melody, a memory passed from mouth to mouth, generation to generation. You close your eyes. The warmth, the voices, the mead, the flickering fire, it all swirls together. And for the first time since arriving, the stew in your belly feels like enough. You'll still dream about pizza tonight, but maybe, just maybe, you'll do it with a full heart. You wake up to the unmistakable sensation of something wet on your foot. Not cold, not warm, just wet. You sit up, panic blooming behind your eyes, only to see the family goat calmly chewing on your blanket. Its nose dribbling onto your toes like it's trying to forge an unwanted friendship. Welcome to Viking Bedtime Round 2. If you thought last night was rough, tonight drives the point home. Sleep isn't something you get here. It's something you battle for. You share your sleeping space with at least 6 people and, depending on the time of year, several animals. The longhouse is one open room, sectioned only by who's claimed which lump of straw-covered dirt as their spot. Spoiler, you don't have a spot. You have a corner near the wall that leaks when it rains and echoes when someone snores. Which is always. Viking houses weren't built for silence, with no insulation and barely a chimney. Sound bounces freely off the wooden walls. You get the full concert. Coughs, whispered arguments, the occasional shout in sleep, and the steady, rhythmic wheeze of Arn's nasal passage doing its best impression of a dying sea lion. Historically, it's believed most Viking families slept communally for warmth and safety. The hearth burned all night, a low fire offering more smoke than heat. You lie close to it, trying not to choke. At least the goats moved on to gnawing someone's boot. You tried turning over quietly. Big mistake. The rustling wakes the toddler to Matt's over, who begins to cry. The toddler's mother shushes loudly. The father snores louder in protest. Someone curses. The dog barks. You sigh into your straw pile and accept your fate. Sleep hygiene wasn't a concept yet. Mattresses were sacks of straw or feathers, and bedding was shared. You're lucky to have a single wool blanket. It smells like old cheese and wet dog, but it's the warmest thing you own now. Historians still argue whether Vikings liked sleeping communally, or simply had no better option. There are hints in sagas and excavation layouts that some wealthier families had curtained beds or even platforms, but for most people, especially you, that's fantasy. You're elbow to elbow with humanity. And livestock. You finally drift off. Then the chickens wake up. One of them has decided your head is a perch. It flaps once, noisily, and settles into your hair like it owns the place. You don't move, because you've learned that in Viking life, sometimes peace means making a truce with poultry. By morning, your body aches in places you didn't know could ache. Your spine has formed a gentle question mark, and your mouth tastes like smoke, sour beer, and disappointment. You sit up, brushing straw from your hair, and try to remember who you are. It takes a while. Breakfast is more gruel. You eat it outside in silence, watching mist roll across the fjord. It's oddly beautiful. Cold. Yes, damp. Definitely. But beautiful, all the same. Someone offers you a boiled egg. You almost cry. Quirky tidbit. Some Viking families actually used bed companions, strategically not just for warmth, but for alliances, gossip, even matchmaking. If you wanted someone to marry your daughter, maybe you made sure they slept next to each other all winter. Talk about slow burns. You think about this as you glance across the fire and catch Helga glaring at the goat again. Is chewing on her sock now. Maybe the goat's the real matchmaker here. Later, you help spread fresh straw all over the sleeping area well. Less fresh and less moldy. You sneeze 4 times. Someone cheers. The longhouse smells like humanity in its most concentrated form. Sweat, wood smoke, animals, and onions. You hate how normal it's becoming. Still, that night, when you tuck into your itchy blanket, you notice something surprising. You're comfortable. Not because anything's changed, but because your body's adapting. Your brain, reluctantly, too. You tuck your hands under your armpits for warmth. You nudge the goat off your blanket instead of begging it. And when someone rolls over onto your leg, you grunt, adjust, and go back to sleep. It's not peaceful, but it's enough. You've survived another night. Barely. This time, it was the dog who threw up in the straw. But the good news? It's Saturday, which means bath day. The village stirs early with a kind of quiet anticipation. A few people are already hauling buckets from the river. Children run naked through the smoke, shrieking as they're caught, scrubbed, and handed off like greasy potatoes. You're handed a tunic and told, "Don't wear that in. It's your clean one." You nod, clutching it like it's holy silk. It's still made of itchy wool and stained in places best left unnamed. But by current standards, it's practically couture. You'll follow the others to the bath area, which is brace yourself a large wooden tub outside, filled with water warmed over the hearth. You count maybe 5 buckets of boiling water mixed with 20 buckets of icy sludge. Someone stirs it with a stick. You're informed this is the deluxe version. You strip down. You're trying to act cool, but your body's making the note. Face a second your foot hits the water. Your soul tries to exit through your teeth. It's cold enough to make your past lives flinch. Still, in you go. Vikings did. In fact, bathe weekly, typically on or washing day. They used soap made from lion animal fat. It gets you clean, but it also strips the oil from your skin and makes your armpits smell like rancid beef stew. You scrub with a rough cloth while someone pours water over your head from a ladle. You attempt small talk. They respond by scrubbing your back like they're trying to sand a ship hull. Friendship. Historians still argue whether Viking hygiene was actually superior to that of other Europeans. English chroniclers mocked them for being too clean, but modern archaeology shows they had tweezers, combs, ear spoons, and nail cleaners. Basically, Vikings had a full grooming kit, but not much soap. As you step out of the tub shivering pink, and feeling like a boiled sausage, you realize something. You feel amazing. Your skin is no longer coated in fish residue and forged soot. You're still itchy, but you now understand why Saturday was everyone's favorite day. Someone tosses you your fresh tunic. You put it on, relishing the dry fabric. You even smell a faint scent of juniper, or maybe birch. Someone added herbs to the bath water. Back at the longhouse, everyone's buzzing. Clean hair is braided, beards are combed, feet are wrapped in fresh straw socks. A small fire burns extra hot to warm everyone up. You sit near it, hugging your knees, feeling dare you say human again. That afternoon, you're taught how to shave with a knife. It's terrifying. Helga holds your chin and says, "Don't flinch." You flinch. She rolls her eyes and keeps going. Somehow, you survive with most of your chin intact. Quirky tidbit. Vikings valued grooming so much that some Norse men reportedly brought combs and tweezers on raids. Nothing says pillaging professional like clean fingernails while storming a mall. Evening comes with an odd calm. Everyone's tired from scrubbing, but also lighter, like layers of dirt and hardship have been lifted. You sit outside on a log, watching the sunset bleed over the fjord, and suddenly, the world doesn't seem quite so harsh. Someone plays a bone flute again. It's slightly less terrible now. Helga sits beside you, her hair neatly braided, smelling faintly of herbs and smoke. She doesn't say anything, neither do you, and in that silence, for a brief, golden moment, you forget about lice, goat breath, and fermented soup. You're just a person, freshly bathed, watching the sky smear into stars. You hear the Jarl's longhouse before you see it. Deep voices echo through the beams. The occasional clang of a cup on a wooden table punctuates laughter, and the smell of roasted meat curls out through the doorway like it's trying to seduce your nose into committing treason. This isn't like the smoke-stained hut you've been sleeping in. No straw mattresses or goat farts here. The Jarl's longhouse is taller, wider, with sturdy oak beams carved with knotwork dragons. Thick tapestries hang from the walls, likely dyed with imported plant pigments, and even the dirt floor feels tidier, less tragic. You step inside, and your eyes take a moment to adjust to the flickering torchlight. A central fire pit runs almost the full length of the room, with smoke trailing lazily into the rafters where it gathers like gossip. Along each side, benches and heavy wooden tables hold food, drink, lots of elbows. At the far end, the Jarl reclines on an elevated seat, flanked by 2 serious-looking warriors, and what appears to be a perfectly drinking horn shaped like a swan. Naturally, he raises a hand. You freeze. He waves you forward. Someone whispers, "Keep your eyes low, and do not step on the dog." You look down. Sure enough, there's a massive hound stretched across the floor, watching you like it's wondering how crunchy your femur might be. The Jarl nods to you. You stammer something between "yes, honored lord," and "please don't kill me." He laughs. "Relax. It's not blood day. Everyone laughs. You don't. In Viking settlements, the Jarl was more than just a chief. He was lawmaker, war leader, judge, landlord, and local celebrity all rolled into one. The longhouse functioned as a court, banquet hall, and sometimes a war room. If something important was happening in the village, it was happening here. Someone hands you a cup of ale. It's strong. You sip and pretend not to cough. You watch as people bring disputes to the Jarl's. Goat wandered into his cabbage field. Whose axe was used without permission? Who owes 3 ewes and a barrel of butter after losing a bet on a wrestling match? These aren't casual complaints. They're public performances, wrapped in honor and obligation. Historians still argue whether Viking society was more democratic or hierarchical. On one hand, there were assemblies called things, where free men could speak and vote. On the other hand, if the Jarl didn't like your opinion, he might exile you, fine you, or send his cousin to challenge you to trial by combat. Just as the night deepens, the mood shifts from political to theatrical. A skalda poet historian, his voice rings out over the fire, telling tales of Thor's hammer, sea dragons, and love lost to war. His words are slow and heavy, like he's carving them into the air with his tongue. You don't understand every line, but you feel them like drum beats in your chest. Then come the contests. Arm wrestling. Someone challenges a man to a game involving balancing a hot coal on the back of their hand. You don't enter that one. Quirky tidbit. Some Viking drinking contests involved rhyming insults, fighting battles where the loser wasn't just mocked, but sometimes physically ejected from the hall, with or without clothes. A man next to you tells you the Jarl once defeated a rival by out-drinking him and seducing his cousin. You nod like this is completely normal behavior. Then someone slams a carved chest onto the table, revealing silver armbands and polished brooches. These are rewards for loyalty, bravery, or ridiculous luck. The Jarl hands one to a young woman who reportedly carried her injured brother 5 miles home on her back, while fending off a wolf with a spoon. You clap. She shrugs. Wasn't even a big wolf. By the time the fire has burned low and the hole begins to empty, you're full of awe, fish, and fear. You leave the longhouse into the cold night air, your ears ringing with stories, your nose filled with spice and smoke, and a strange, warm pride blooming in your chest. You weren't just tolerated tonight, you were part of it. And as the wind picks up off the fjord, you look back once more at the Jarl's longhouse, still glowing softly like the beating heart of the village. Tomorrow, you'll go back to scraping hides or catching lice. But tonight you belonged. You wake up to the sound of a goat screaming, not bleating, screaming. You bolt upright, still wrapped in your blanket, and stumble outside with the others to find the source of the chaos. The goat is tied near the ritual pole. There's blood on its forehead, a red smear that looks less like injury and more like intention. Everyone around you is calm. Some even look excited. That's when you remember. Today is the pagan sacrifice, and you're invited. You follow the crowd uphill, toward a clearing near a ring of weathered stones. Smoke curls from torches, wooden statues of the gods Odin with his missing eye, Thor with his hammer, Freya with a cat chariot watch silently. The air feels heavier up here, like the earth is holding its breath. The goat is led to the center, a man in a long robe. The Gothi Viking priest begins to chant in a language you only half understand. The crowd joins in, low and rhythmic, like distant thunder. The goat seems less in. Then, quickly, efficiently, the goat is sacrificed. You flinch, others cheer. The blood is caught in a bowl and carried around, sprinkled on statues, dabbed on foreheads, marked along doorways. Helga turns to you, smears a bit across your brow with her thumb, and says, "For luck." You resist the urge to pass out. Were crucial to Viking life. They weren't just about worship, they were contracts. Between people and gods, between this world and whatever waited beyond. Offerings of animals, food, and sometimes, though, were believed to keep the gods happy and the harvests flowing. Historians still argue whether these sacrifices were symbolic or literal in most villages. Some accounts, like those from Christian observers, were probably exaggerated to paint Norse people as barbaric. But blood rites, very real. After the sacrifice, a feast begins. Meat is cooked on spits over open fires. Beer and mead flow like gossip. Everyone is loud now. The quiet reverence has been replaced with celebration. You're handed a hunk of roasted goat leg. You chew slowly, not sure if it's delicious or if your brain is in shock. Then the dancing begins. Not graceful, courtly walk. This is stomping, clapping, jumping in eye circle, kind of dancing. Half of it seems improvised, the other half chaotic. You're dragged into it by a child and a one-eyed man who laughs like a thunderstorm. Quirky tidbit. Viking dances weren't choreographed, were tribal, freeform, and often resembled a combination of folk traditions and battle moves. You're doing something that looks like a chicken trying to dodge arrows. No one minds. The Gothi starts telling fortunes using rune stones cast on a cloth. People gather around, leaning in to hear whether the gods favor a marriage, a voyage, or a new pig pen. You ask if you can try. He nods. You pick 3 stones. He frowns. Travel. Loss. Transformation. You ask if that's bad. He says, not bad, just loud. That's not comforting. As the sun dips below the hills, the sky glows in colors too wild to name. You sit with Helga, chewing on roasted turnip, listening to stories of past winters, lost loves, and sea monsters. You begin to understand. This isn't just a party. It's glue. Ritual binds the community. It reminds people who they are, and who they fear, and what they hope. As the fire crackles, and someone starts humming again, you glance up at the wooden gods. Odin stares back with his carved eye. You nod to him, just in case. You're not religious, but tonight, you believe in something. You're hauling firewood when you hear it shouting, stomping, and the unmistakable clatter of shields banging together like thunder on legs. You freeze, then sprint toward the noise. They've returned. The raiders. From behind the rise, figures appear, some limping, some laughing, all filthy, armed, and louder than a wedding full of drunk oxen. The warriors are back from their latest sea voyage, and, judging by the cheering, the clinking of metal, and the overwhelming smell of salt, sweat, and blood, they didn't come home empty-handed. They marched straight into the center of the village, dumping loot with dramatic flair. Silver bracelets, a bishop's hat may be stolen, maybe just an elaborate soup bowl. One man has a new necklace made of human teeth. You pretend not to notice. The energy in the village flips instantly. Children swarm the returning fighters, poking at their armor and asking for stories. Women inspect goods and groan at the added laundry. And the elders, they just nod knowingly, like they've seen this 100 times. Probably have. You're still standing awkwardly in the path when one of the raid towering man named Einar throws a bloody sack at your feet. Fish, he says. You open it. Definitely not fish. You close it. He laughs. This is your first taste of what a raiding party's return looks like. It's not just a celebration. It's a performance. Reputation is everything here. Who killed who? Who jumped which wall? Who set which monastery on fire with a burning sheep of E? It is recited like poetry and exaggerated like opera. Historians still argue. Someone mutters beside you whether Viking raids were random or strategic. Judging by Einar's careful recounting of how they waited for a feast day and the priests to be drunk, you'd say very strategic. As night falls, the feast begins. The warriors sit closest to the fire, flaunting fresh wounds and battle stories. One has an ear missing, and says he lost it in single combat. Another says he bit it off himself out of boredom. No one questions it. You're given the job of serving mead. You pour carefully, trying not to spill, and definitely trying not to make eye contact with the man using a sword as a toothpick. Quirky tidbit. Viking warriors often adopted nicknames after raids. Blood Ox, or, weirdly, these weren't just for fun, they were status markers, like your resume written in someone else's blood. Ino lifts his horn and demands a song. The skald obliges, spinning tales of sailing storms, burning churches, and stolen gold. Everyone cheers at the dramatic parts, especially the loud, violent ones. You wince. You smile. Then the teasing begins. One of the warriors locks eyes with you and slurs. New boy hasn't fought yet. Bet he cries at the sound of a cowbell. He tried to laugh it off. Bad idea. Someone tosses you a wooden sword. Prove yourself. You raise it slowly. Everyone forms a loose circle. Eno steps forward. He's twice your size, and only mildly drunk. He grins like he's about to pet a mouse with a hammer. You raise your sword. You swing. He misses. Completely. He swings back. Gently, you fall anyway. Everyone roars with laughter, including Einar, who lifts you back up and hands you a chunk of meat. You're weak, he says, but at least you're not dead. High praise. Later that night, as you lie in your straw corner nursing a bruised pride and an aching shoulder, you hear the warriors still celebrating. Some are singing. Others are, wrestling. The goat tries to climb on your feet again, and as you drift off, you realize, in this place, survival isn't about strength. It's about enduring the chaos, the noise, the teasing, and the blood-slicked glory of it all. One day, maybe you'll come back from a raid, and maybe, just maybe, you'll have a nickname too. Preferably not goat. The first frost bites your nose before you even open your eyes. You lie there, stiff as a smoked fish, cocooned in your itchy blanket, while the wind howls outside like a pack of wolves arguing over soup. Your breath fogs the air. The goat is wearing someone's old tunic. The baby in the corner has turned an impressive shade of purple. Winter has arrived. You shuffle out of bed, your joints creaking like frozen leather. Everyone's slower this morning, bundled tight in layered wool, moving like sleepwalkers through molasses. The fire's burned low, and the hearth ashes barely glow. You grab your boots. They're stiff with ice. Today is chop wood, fetch water, don't die day. Viking winters were brutal. Depending on your latitude, they could last 6 to 7 months, blanketing the landscape in snow, ice, and a kind of silence that makes you hear your own spine. The longhouse becomes your entire world, your bedroom, your kitchen, your barn, your prison. First, you haul water from the river. The surface is frozen over, and it takes 3 people and a blunt axe to punch through. Your fingers go numb after the first bucket. You're warned not to stop moving or you'll turn into an ice pole. Back inside, you're sent to tend the stew pot. It's the same pot that's been simmering since autumn. You're not entirely sure what's in it anymore. Cabbage, root vegetables, possibly fish, possibly former fish. Someone jokes, it's so fermented, it qualifies as a living organism. You laugh, then wonder if they're right. Meals are heavier. Now barley porridge, salt meat, dried apples, and anything pickled. You begin to dream of green things, fresh bread, even a tomato, if you knew what that was. Historians still argue whether Viking settlements maintained balanced nutrition during long winters. Some archaeological evidence points to periods of famine and nutritional deficiencies. Others suggest that clever preservation techniques, drying, fermenting, salting, kept families fed, if not exactly thrilled. Afternoons are short. The sun barely rises above the horizon before sulking off again like a moody teenager. You can feel the weight of it in everyone. Cabin fever settles in early. There's more arguing now. Minor disputes over sleeping space. Passive-aggressive grunting over whose turn it is to empty the chamber pot. You witness a heated shouting match about a misplaced sock that escalates to threats involving a spoon and a frozen herring. Still, people cope. Children invent indoor games using bones and carved dice. The scold tells extra stories. Elders teach knotwork or carving. Helga shows you how to mend a boot with fish gut thread. It's oddly therapeutic. Also smells terrible. Quirky tidbit. Some Viking families painted or carved protective runes on the inside of their longhouses during winter, hoping to ward off bad spirits, sickness, or sheer boredom. You find a few symbols scratched into the wall near your bed. One might be a rune, one might be a doodle of a very angry pig. And then there's the darkness. No candles, just firelight and oil lamps made from fish bladders. You squint all evening. Reading isn't exactly common unless you're a monk. So you listen. 2 sagas, 2 ghost stories, 2 the drip of to someone snoring like a drunken bear. You miss the sky. You miss walking outside without wearing 17 layers. You missed your toes, which you're beginning to suspect have left the building entirely. But then, one night, it snows. Real snow. Quiet, soft, shimmering under the moonlight, like the gods dropped flour over the land. You step outside, alone, wrapped in every blanket you own. The air is sharp, but the silence is holy. No chickens, no shouting, just the crunch of snow under your boots and the stars above you, clear and cold and impossibly close. You breathe in. It smells like wood smoke, ice, and survival. You're still here, and somehow, that's enough. It starts with a goat. More specifically, a goat tied to a fence post with a decorative ribbon and a pinnacle necklace. You blink. The goat looks smug. You look confused. Then Helga walks up, smacks you on the arm, and says, they're offering you marriage. Turns out, someone's family has noticed your work ethic, your strength, and your tragic attempts at milking cows. They've decided you'd make a fine spouse, which is wild, considering you haven't bathed since last Saturday and currently smelled like smoked goat feet. But this is how it works here. Marriage isn't about passion, property, dowries, lineage. Love might come later, A girl named Asa is the center of this particular arrangement. You've seen her around, quiet, efficient, always elbow deep in some stew or skinning something terrifying. Today, she looks at you, shrugs, and says, "At least you're not drooling." You consider this high praise. In Viking settlements, marriage was a public, negotiated affair. Families discussed terms: livestock, land, household roles, and often cemented the union with a feast. Consent mattered, but it was a social negotiation, not a private romance. You're invited or do sit in on the arrangement meeting. It takes place around a smoky fire with both families seated across from each other. Your name is mispronounced twice. Someone references your strong shoulders. You try not to choke on your drink. Historians still argue how much autonomy Viking women had in marriage arrangements. Some sagas suggest they could reject suitors and even divorce easily. But one thing's clear: Asa has opinions, and no one's ignoring them. She states firmly that she won't marry a man who can't gut a fish. You lie and say you can gut a fish. Everyone nods approvingly. You begin to sweat. Quirky tidbit: part of the Viking marriage ritual involves sharing a ceremonial cup of meat. Sometimes, the ritual unbinding of hair. Hair was symbolic, powerful, and slightly itchy. Afterward came the bedding, which was very public. You try not to think about that part too hard. After negotiations, Asa's father gifts your host family 3 goats and a modest iron brooch. Your net worth has just gone up dramatically. And just like that, you're engaged. Sort of. You spend the next few days preparing. That means no more forge burns, no stew duty, and, tragically, no goat wrestling. You're put to work carving wooden spoons for the feast. You are now the husband material on display. People nod at you like you're a wheelbarrow they're considering buying. The wedding feast arrives fast. The longhouse is swept out. Herbs are thrown over the fire to ward off bad luck. And everyone wears their best meaning clothes with only 2 holes instead of 4. You and Asa sit at the central table. She doesn't smile, but she passes you a bowl without spilling it, which is practically flirting. A skald recites a poem about love and war. Someone offers a toast that involves a joke about goats and a dubious pun about plowing. You fake laugh like your life depends on it. Then comes the ceremonial mead. You drink from the same cup. Asa doesn't flinch. You take that as a win. People cheer. Horns blow. A chicken gets loose, and someone calls that a blessing. You still have no idea how much of this is tradition and how much is just people being very drunk. After the feast, you help clean. Asa watches you sweep ash off the hearth. She says, "You're not completely useless." You reply, "You're not completely terrifying." She smirks. It's a beginning. That night, back in your corner of the longhouse, you lie awake, listening to the wind and wondering how quickly your life has changed. One week you were the newbie shoveling goat dung. Now you're a married member of the village. And while it's not exactly a fairy tale, don't have a castle, a ring, or even clean socks, you have a name here. You have someone who sees you. And in this world, that means more than most things. You wake up to shouting again. But this time, it's different. Not the usual "who stole my pickled fish?" or "the goat ate the soap again" kind of shouting. This is serious. 2 men are standing outside the longhouse, red-faced, gesturing wildly. One has a bleeding lip, the other's holding what used to be a chair. There's a crowd already forming. Because nothing gets Viking villagers out of bed faster than the promise of a good feud. You shuffle closer, trying to make sense of it. Apparently, someone borrowed someone else's cloak and wore it during an unholy outhouse incident. There's a dispute over property, dignity, and sheep ownership that goes back generations. The word "holmgang" is whispered. Oh no! You're about to witness Viking justice. In small settlements, the local Yahol or thing handled legal matters. But sometimes, when honor was bruised beyond the point of reconciliation, or when people just needed an excuse to hit each other, with sticks, disputes were settled through trial by combat. The holmgang one-on-one, set rules, public spectacle. The whole village follows the feuding pair to a flat field near the water's edge. The circle is marked out with shields and stones. This is the home, the island where the fights will happen. Stepping outside the ring means surrender. Dying inside it, well, that settles the matter. You find yourself beside Helga, who's already munching on dried fish like it's popcorn. The combatants strip to their tunics, grab blunt wooden swords, and enter the ring. There's no bell, no ref, just a nod from the Jarl. Then, they charge. The first man swings wildly. The second ducks and jabs. The crowd roars with every hit. like it's a Norse WWE match. Mud flies. Someone slips. Someone loses a shoe. One man yells something about your mother's butter, which causes actual gasps. You learn fast. Viking insults were an art. Flighting, the tradition of trading poetic barbs, was often as damaging as any punch, and sometimes more memorable. Quirky tidbit. In some regions, the accused could opt to settle disputes through livestock compensation. You insult someone's beard, that's a tuship offense. Steal their axe, that'll cost you a cow and an apology ham. But today's not about livestock. It's about honor. After a flurry of muddy blows, one man ends up on his back, wheezing like a dying walrus. He taps out. Everyone cheers. A goat bleats supportively. The winner helps him up. And just like that, the feud is over. The loser promises repayment 3 sacks of barley in a day of labor. It's done. Justice Viking style, public, messy, weirdly efficient. But the fun doesn't stop there. Later that afternoon, a more peaceful thing meeting is held. This is the local assembly, where free men voice concerns, propose laws, and elect leaders. It's held in the open, with a big rock serving as a speaker's platform. You're not allowed to speak, yet newcomers earn that right, but you listen. People argue about fence lines, trade rights, and whether Einar should be allowed to play his bone flute after dark. Historians still argue about how democratic these assemblies truly were. Some see them as others view them as tools of the elite. What's clear is that Viking law was rooted in oral tradition. Rules were memorized, recited, and passed down through storytelling. If you wanted to stay on the Jarl's good side, you paid attention. By the end of the meeting, 2 new rules have been agreed upon. No goats in the longhouse during meal. Einar's flute is banned until spring. You nod approvingly. Progress. That evening, you sit with Asa, watching the sun drip into the sea. She says, "You ever challenge anyone to a holmgang?" You shake your head. "Not yet." She smirks. "You will." You don't know whether that's a threat or a promise. Either way, you start practicing with a wooden stick the next morning, just in case. The boat smells like old fish and Coldafia. You sit near the bow, legs numb from the icy spray, clutching a damp sack of salted cod and trying very hard not to look at the horizon. Because the thing about Viking ships is they're gorgeous to look at and absolute nightmares to sail in. Not really, not yet. But you've been chosen to join a trading voyage, maybe a raid, maybe both. In the Norse world, those lines blur. Is one man's exchange of goods is another man's armed negotiation. You didn't volunteer, but when the Jarl pointed and said you nodded. That's how it works here. So now you're on a long ship, shoulder to shoulder with 20 other villagers, most of whom either smell like mead or look like they haven't blinked in 3 days. You recognize Einar, who's sharpening his axe for the 8th time, and Asa, standing a few feet back, arms crossed, clearly amused by your pale green seasick face. The sail snaps open with a deep hump, catching the wind like a dragon's breath. And just like that, you're moving. Viking longships were marvels of engineering. Sleek, fast, shallow enough to navigate rivers, but sturdy enough for the open sea. They could cross oceans or sneak into harbors like ghosts. The average ship carried between 30 to 60 men, their gear, and whatever loot or livestock they hope to bring back. You're mostly hoping to bring back yourself. The wind bites hard. Salt crusts your lips. Your tunic sticks to your skin. You're soaked through in minutes. You cling to the side, watching waves rise and fall like the backs of great beasts, each one threatening to toss you into the frothing depths. Someone sings loudly. It's off-key, and probably obscene. You're told this helps keep rhythm during rowing, and spirits up. You try to join in. You choke on a mouthful of sea spray. Asa laughs and hands you a leather flask. You sip. It burns like boiling pine. You sip again. Quirky tidbit. Some Viking crews brought along cats to keep rats at bay on long voyages. You spot one now, curled under a bench, looking supremely unconcerned with your misery. It blinks once and goes back to sleep. You envy it deeply. You try to find your sea legs. Fail. Then find them again. Sort of 4 days. The horizon blurs. You eat dried meat, stale flatbread, and lukewarm ale. You learn to tie knots with half-frozen fingers. You bail water from the hull with a carved bowl. You take turns on watch, eyes scanning for rocks, storms, or worse ships with unfamiliar sails. At night, you huddle beneath a sailcloth with 3 others. The sky above is endless. You've never seen so many stars. They spilled across the heavens like shattered silver. Someone points out constellations used for navigation. You pretend to recognize them. You mostly just try not to shiver too loudly. Historians still argue. One man mutters, how far Vikings really traveled. Some say Constantinople. Others say America. You believe them. Right now, it feels like you've left the world entirely. Eventually, land appears, a low gray blur on the horizon that slowly sharpens into cliffs, trees, smoke life. The mood on the ship shifts instantly. Weapons are checked, packs are tightened, a chant begins. Rhythmic, ancient, terrifying. You grip your spear tighter. You're not sure what's waiting for you on shore. Trade, battle, something in between. All you know is that you're here now, wrapped in salt and noise and legend. Neither is going back. This is what it means to be Norse. Not just surviving winter, not just farming land, but carving your story into the world with blade, trade, or stubborn footsteps. The ship cuts through the final waves. Your heart pounds like a war drum. One more breath, one more prayer, and your boots hit the foreign shore. You're back, or at least you're somewhere back. The return voyage was brutal. No one talks about how quiet the ship is on the way home. The chanting's gone. The laughter's gone. You lost a man to the sea, and another to fever. Even the cat looked depressed. But the village appears ahead, rising out of the mist like an old friend who never writes but still makes you soup when you show up. You'd step onto the dock with legs that barely work anymore. Your cloak is soaked, your boots falling apart, and your spine now permanently shaped like a question mark. But you're alive. You did it. As you shuffle toward the longhouse, you pass faces both familiar and new. Asa is there, arms crossed as always, but with the faintest smile twitching at the corner of her mouth. You nod. She nods back. Viking romance. Folks, inside, the hearth fire is already lit. The smell of wood smoke wraps around you like a mother's hug. Someone hands you a bowl of stew. Same stew. Still gray. Still confusing. But tonight it's the best thing you've ever tasted. You sit near the fire. You stretch your legs. You listen as someone starts singing, and for the first time in what feels like years, your body begins to relax. Helga passes you a clean tunic. You change. It itches less than you remember. Or maybe you've just become impervious to wool-based suffering. A child pokes your arm. Did you kill anyone? You shake your head. Did you bring treasure? You shake your head again. She frowns. Then why'd you go? You think for a moment. Then you answer. To come back. She doesn't get it. Not yet. But one day she will. The Jarl announces a feast. Not for you specifically, but you're included. People laugh again. The bone flute is back. Einar attempts a handstand and almost takes out 3 chickens. You lean against the wall and close your eyes for a moment. You can still feel the ocean in your bone. You can still hear the creak of the longship and the cries of sea. You can still taste the salt, smell the blood, hear the chant. But all of that is fading now slowly, gently replaced by the crackle of fire, the scent of pine and mead, the murmur of familiar voices in the dark. And just like that, the night grows still. You lie down on your straw mat, the goat curled up beside you like a hairy furnace. Asa kicks you once to move your elbow off her blanket. The longhouse breathes in rhythm around you, and in that final, flickering moment before sleep claims you, you realize something strange. You're not a guest anymore. You're part of this place now. You're home. Let your eyes grow heavier now. The fire in the longhouse is just warm embers, glowing like sleepy stars in a cradle of ash. You lie still, wrapped in wool and wood smoke, listening to the faint rustle of someone shifting in the dark. A foot against straw, a quiet sigh, a soft breath from the goat by your side. The wind outside hums against the walls. Gentle now. No longer howling or biting, just whispering through the cracks like it's checking to see if everyone's asleep. Even the sea is silent. You made it. You survived the cold, the smoke, the fishy soup, the singing, the sleepless nights, the odd smells, and the awkward silences. You braved the storm, the lice, the gossip, the blade, and the fear. You worked, you learned, you fell, and you rose again, and now you rest. Not as a stranger anymore, but as someone who belongs among the chickens, the chaos, the carved wooden beams, the ashes-stained tunics, and the wild stories spun by firelight. Let your breath slow, let your fingers uncurl, let your thoughts wander through froscous forests and starlit skies. You don't need to carry the axe tonight. You don't need to chase the horizon. You've earned the quiet. You've earned the warmth. You've earned the sleep. So let the longhouse cradle you. Let the sounds of life fade into stillness. Let the night close gently around your shoulders like a soft, fur-lined cloak. You're safe now. You're home. And you're already dreaming.